May 8, 2025. In St. Peter's Square, an electric silence fell as believers from around the world craned their necks towards the Sistine Chapel. Suddenly, bells began to toll, their echoes mingling with the cheers of tens of thousands of faithful waving flags and chanting Habemus Papam. White smoke billowed into the April sky above Rome, signaling that the conclave had chosen a new pontiff. When Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost of Chicago stepped onto the central balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, history was made. He became Pope Leo XIV, the first American to ever hold the chair of Peter. His first words to the crowd were simple and profound: "Peace be with you." It was a moment of jubilation, but it capped decades of sacrifice, controversy, and heartache. Few could have guessed that the boy from Chicago's South Side, son of a Navy veteran and a librarian, would one day ascend to the papacy. Robert Prevost's story began in the modest immigrant neighborhoods of Chicago. He was born on September 14, 1955, in Chicago, Illinois, the eldest of three sons of Louis Marius Prevost and Mildred Martinez. His father, Louis, was a veteran of World War II and later a school administrator, a stern yet caring presence with French and Italian roots. His mother, Mildred, a soft-spoken librarian of Spanish heritage, cultivated in Robert a love of books and quiet reflection. The Prevost household was devoutly Catholic. Sundays meant Mass at St. Mary of the Assumption, the family's neighborhood church on 137th Street. As a boy, Robert served as an altar server there, standing on the hard wooden pews to hold the chalice during solemn masses. Even in elementary school, classmates recalled young Robert as serious and prayerful, often lingering after Mass to light candles for the poor or visit the sick. Growing up on Chicago's far south side in the 1960s, Robert Prevost witnessed both the joys and struggles of urban life. He helped his mother cook meals for neighbors and listened raptly to stories of his father's wartime bravery. But the city also bore scars: racial strife, economic hardship, and questions of faith in an uncertain age. These early years hardened Prevost's resolve. After graduating from the minor seminary of the Augustinian order in 1973, he headed east to pursue college, carrying with him the conviction that God had a special plan for his life. Prevost enrolled at Villanova University in Pennsylvania, an institution deeply rooted in Augustinian heritage. There he studied mathematics, a discipline far from theology, but one that shaped his analytical mind and calm demeanor. In 1977, he graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics. Amid lectures and late-night study sessions, he never lost touch with his vocation. That fall, almost on impulse, he entered the novitiate of the Order of St. Augustine, OSA, in Chicago. By the next year, at age 23, he had taken his simple vows as an Augustinian, committing himself to the life of poverty, chastity, and obedience that his mentors had preached. The years that followed were punctuated by rigorous study and quiet service. Prevost returned to Chicago's Catholic Theological Union, CU, where, in 1982, he earned a Master of Divinity degree. Some nights, students at St. Rita of Cassia High School would find him in the physics lab, substituting as a teacher. On others, he quietly helped at the parish, teaching math to anyone who asked. Those humble tasks grounded him. Then, on June 19, 1982, in a ceremony at the Augustinian convent in Rome, Father Robert Prevost was ordained to the priesthood by Archbishop Jean Jadot. In the eyes of his family and friends back in Chicago, their son was now a full priest of the church, vested in white robes and ready to serve. Rome became the setting for Prevost's next chapters. He remained in Italy to pursue canon law, earning a licentiate in 1984 and a doctorate in canon law in 1987 from the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas, the Angelicum. These years were intense: long lectures in Latin, tens of thousands of pages of church law, and the daily rigors of monastic life in one of Christianity's holiest cities. Yet Prevost thrived. Those close to him would later describe him as methodical and patient, traits sharpened by solving complex legal cases in class and mediating minor disputes in the Augustinian community. When his studies concluded, he returned home not to Chicago, but to faraway Peru, beginning a missionary chapter that would test both his spirit and heart. In 1985, Father Prevost was assigned to the Augustinian mission in Peru. He arrived in the coastal desert country with barely a word of Spanish, but ready to learn. His first posting was in the territorial prelature of Chilicanas, in northern Peru. As chancellor of the prelature, he dealt with administrative work by day, but in the evenings he taught catechism to villagers and visited families in tiny adobe villages. Those were years of hardship and sacrifice. austere living conditions, disease outbreaks, and sometimes the threat of political unrest. Still, Prevost found inspiration in his parishioners. He learned Spanish quickly, dreaming that language of his liturgy and comforting those who had little. After a year in Chilicanas, he briefly returned to Chicago, only to go back to Peru in 1988 for 10 more years. From 1988 to 1998, Prevost directed the Augustinian Seminary in Trujillo, a city that lay on Peru's arid coast. There he trained hundreds of young men in Augustinian life. Long hours of lecturing on theology and canon law became routine. Some days he taught mathematics or presided at youth retreats. Others he served as the prefect of studies at the diocesan seminary. He also became a judge on the regional ecclesiastical court and sat on the College of Consultors for the Trujillo diocese. Through this decade, his reputation grew. He was known as a stern yet compassionate figure, strict in doctrine but gentle in his pastoral counseling. In a town rife with poverty and periodic political violence, though that is not documented in his official biography, Prevost's emphasis on caring for the marginalized drew admiration. By 1998, the Superior General of the Augustinian Order took notice. Prevost was called back to Chicago, where in March 1999 he assumed the role of Provincial Superior for the Augustinians of Chicago. Though he was born in Illinois, by then Prevost was deeply shaped by his years abroad. Yet he returned to his native soil to lead the province that had raised him. It was here, amid the leafy Augustinian friaries of Chicago, that Prevost faced one of his greatest internal crises. In late 2000, an American Augustinian priest named James Ray, already suspended from ministry for allegations of child abuse, sought refuge. Prevost authorized Ray to live under supervision at St. John Stone Friary in Hyde Park. At the time, this was an ordinary administrative decision. Chicago's review board had rejected one plan because it placed Ray near a school, and Prevost agreed to the alternate lodging under supervision. However, within the swirling storm of the church's emerging sex abuse crisis, this decision would later cast a long shadow over Prevost. Critics would point to those years and accuse him of ill judgment. Prevost's defenders noted that the U.S. bishops had not yet adopted stricter abuse protocols until 2002, and that Prevost's role was largely formal. Still, the seeds of controversy were planted, and Prevost carried the weight of that time quietly for years. In 2001, just as many in the church were grappling with scandal, Prevost's career took a dramatic turn. His peers elected him to be Prior General of the Worldwide Augustinian Order, the highest leadership position in the order, for a 6-year term, and again in 2007 for another 6 years. As Prior General, he moved to Rome, living in the Mother House and crisscrossing the globe to visit Augustinian communities. He was the first American to lead the Augustinians, and he oversaw their work in Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Americas. It was a time of immense responsibility, and Prevost approached it with quiet dignity. Those who saw him at general chapters recall a humble man who valued listening to younger friars and wrestled openly with the challenges of maintaining the order's spirit in a changing world. By 2013, having completed 12 years as Prior General, Prevost felt the familiar tug of a calling to return to parish ministry. Pope Francis, a fellow Jesuit from Latin America known for promoting missionaries, appointed him that year as Apostolic Administrator of Chiclayo, Peru. On November 3, 2014, the Vatican announced Prevost's appointment as Apostolic Administrator of the Diocese of Chiclayo and titular Bishop of Sufer. He received episcopal consecration in Chiclayo's Cathedral on December 12, 2014. Prevost, now Bishop Prevost, took the helm of Chiclayo on September 26, 2015, as its residential bishop. That year, he also became a Peruvian citizen, formalizing the deep bond he had formed with the country of his mission. In Chiclayo, Prevost devoted himself to the poor and to education. He reopened classrooms, championed local vocations, and traveled to remote villages where priests were scarce. People there remember him riding in rattling old school buses, greeting children in uniforms, and listening patiently to farmers in dry desert villages. Under his leadership, the diocese built new schools and strengthened catechetical programs. Prevost's fluency in Spanish and understanding of Latin American culture, honed during his decades there, earned him respect. Yet even amid this success, challenges lurked. In 2019, Francis appointed Prevost to the Vatican's Congregation for the Clergy, and in 2020 he took on additional duties as Apostolic Administrator of Callao, Peru. His role expanded in ways few could foresee. On January 30, 2023, Pope Francis made a stunning move, he called Bishop Prevost back to Rome to serve as prefect of the dicastery for bishops. This made Prevost one of the most powerful men in the Church's hierarchy, the chief advisor to the Pope on the appointment of bishops around the world. At the same time, he became president of the Pontifical Commission for Latin America, linking him once again to the continent that had shaped him. On September 30th, 2023, Francis crowned this rise by elevating Prevost to the College of Cardinals, assigning him the deaconry of Santa Monica in Rome. Throughout these years, Prevost's demeanor remained calm and unassuming. He seldom gave interviews, preferring to let his work speak. Yet the ledger of his past choices would follow him. In 2024, on the eve of the papal conclave, scrutiny of Prevost deepened. Survivor advocates and media reports examined his record, particularly his handling of clergy abuse cases. Two cases, separated by decades and continents, stood out. The first was the James Ray incident back in Chicago, which critics now framed as part of a larger failure of transparency. The second was a new allegation from Chiclayo. Three sisters who claimed they were abused by priests in 2007 reported in 2022 that Prevost had not properly investigated their case. They asserted that their report was met with indifference and that any inquiry was superficial. The Chiclayo diocese responded that Bishop Prevost had met with the women in April 2022, encouraged them to seek civil justice, and opened what he believed was an appropriate preliminary canonical investigation. But the sisters rejected this, saying no real investigation had occurred. These controversies created a cloud of tension around Prevost's name in the weeks before the conclave. Within the College of Cardinals, some whispered concerns about whether a leader embroiled in such allegations, however contested, could unify the faithful. As one report noted, abuse advocates are raising concerns about the cardinal's candidacy, suggesting that Prevost's handling of abuse cases should disqualify him. The Pillar, a Catholic news outlet, documented these concerns. It reported that some saw documentation of the Chiclayo case as tailored to be insufficient, so that it would not lead to a full investigation. In Peru, the diocese maintained that Prevost had followed canonical norms and that he had met the young women and opened an investigation. But survivors disputed the diocese's account. Simultaneously, some Chicago sources were revisiting the Ray decision from the 2000s as a sign of possible misjudgment. Against this troubled backdrop, Prevost nonetheless became a leading papal contender. Many cardinals came to admire his humility and wide experience across two continents. They noted that in the modern era, geography no longer barred a candidate. The old fear of a superpower pope had faded as the world became multipolar. Prevost's blend of American formation and Latin American ministry gave him a unique profile, and his reputation among fellow bishops as pragmatic and moderate made him a potential bridge builder. Then, the conclave began in early May 2025. For 25 hours and 37 minutes, 133 cardinal electors from 70 countries deliberated, cast ballots, and prayed for guidance. Prevost's name reportedly gained traction as balloting proceeded. Observers noted that he was one of the few cardinals with both American roots and extensive missionary experience in Latin America. On May 8th, late in the afternoon Rome time, white smoke emerged from the Sistine Chapel chimney. The conclave had elected its new pontiff. Inside, upon learning of his election, Robert Prevost, now to be called Leo XIV, was said to be deeply moved. Cameras later showed Cardinal Prevost, now dressed in cardinal red, looking humbled and prayerful before making his habemus papam appearance. As Pope Leo XIV, he stepped onto the loggia flanked by chamberlains. The bells of the cathedral in Lima began to toll. In Peru and Colombia, crowds spilled into the streets to hear the announcement and to pray for this new son of the Church. In Rome, tens of thousands watched as he raised his hands in blessing. "I am a servant of servants," he said in his first Angelus address, a nod to humility and continuity with Pope Francis. Much of his speech echoed the values he had lived: unity, peace, and service. "Even now, I ask for your prayers," he concluded. "Together, let us be, in the words of my episcopal motto, in illo uno unum, in the one, we are one." With that, Leo XIV took his seat at the very center of Catholic history. From a Chicago altar boy to the Bishop of Rome, Robert Prevost's journey was marked by quiet resolve and significant trials. He had navigated the storms of church scandal and cultural change, serving the poor in Peru, leading an ancient order, and ultimately bridging continents. His election signaled a new chapter, the first American pope, and captivated a world eager to see how this unassuming man would lead. The bells have fallen silent now, but the echoes of Leo XIV's life continue to resonate, a testament to endurance and faith, even through the darkest trials.